Welcome to Woman on It, Hack the Future. My name is Bata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack delivered will be by our guest, Marisha Stewart. Topic: How to Establish Your Worth and Add Tax. Episode 55 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my motto. And empathy is critical when you are establishing your worth and adding tax. Before we dive into the topic, let me mention a few highlights. Let's support SmileyCon and TutorWeb as we bring STEM education in refugee camps. As they say, we may fall flat on our face, but at least we fell forward. Gunnar Stephenson, good luck with your Patreon project. Congratulations also to Laura Mercurio for her successful Her Tech Path community call as she shared what power means to us and what our superpower is. How very in the topic of today's discussion. I wish I have joined that call. Hopefully, we can see the recording somewhere. It's always great to see women continue to succeed. Congratulations to Noontide President and CEO Mildred Murphy, as Noontide received a warm welcome from Florida Governor's Office. I'm sorry we couldn't meet this time, but I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to meet with Mildred. In today's episode, we are going to learn how to establish your worth and add tax. One would think separation or divorce would not happen after accepting the call to do God's work. But God had a bigger plan for Dr. Marisha Stewart, a licensed minister at Cornerstone Peaceful Bible Baptist Church. The traumatic experience of her divorce was the most influential moment that catapulted her to be an encourager, author, counselor, influencer, divorce coach, and podcaster of the Lioness Queen podcast and the I Am series Women's Empowerment Session. Now her podcast airs on 10 different platforms all over the world with 4.2 thousand downloads and was recently featured as number 11 in FeedPost, top 20 Christian woman podcasts, and number 12 in top divorce podcasts. Since the launch of her podcast in March of 2020, she has been featured on more than 30 other podcasts, IG live shows, and is giving women hope and a voice. I definitely would like you to encourage you to go and check her podcast. She's also on Instagram. And I wanted to ask you, Marisha, where in the world are you? Because I believe you're closer to my sphere at the moment. I'm here in lovely Miami. What about you?
I'm in Maryland,
Where is that?
close to the nation's capital, close to Washington, D.C.
Beautiful. I hope the weather is as kind as mine, maybe not as hot, but definitely spring is in the air, and today we are mentioning kindness and empathy, and also the fact that we need to be apply empathy also to ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is true.
This is so true because Women on It is devoted to breaking down the barriers that prevent so many people, especially women, from reaching their full potential. So, Marisha, what is your number one advice to those who do not know how to establish their self worth?
So, my number one mantra, my number one motto is living residue free. I think as an individual, we don't realize how much residue we have in our life from our past that holds us back from moving forward, that holds us back from establishing healthy relationships, that holds us back from even launching out, trying new things, starting new businesses. Residue from our past is our biggest culprit. And so my mantra is all about living residue free, getting rid of the residue from our past so that we can move forward in our purpose wherever God is leading us, or wherever you feel you are purposed to go, living residue free. That's my number one.
That's beautiful. I guess the residue free applies for every day because we have a certain routine. Every night we take off our makeup and we leave all that residue and we go clean into bed and we wake up fresh in the morning. So that's the routine you advise. But
Mhm.
how to actually get rid of that dirty stuff that is clogging our pores of freedom?
So the question, so the biggest piece about residue always starts with a negative event, right? And so the negative event was either imposed or was self-imposed on us. And from that develops negative thoughts, self-defeating thoughts. Then it leads to self-defeating behaviors. So the first step is really recognizing what the event was and then how it leads to certain self-defeating behaviors that we have, or habits that we have, that are blocking you from being residue free. And once you realize that impact, then you can kind of clean and really focus on, well, why am I holding on to this negative event? And I would say for myself, with my divorce, it was the worst experience of my life. And I held on to it. And I always say I love to sing a nursery rhyme. And the nursery rhyme was me. I was always making my ex look bad, right? And in that regard, that was my nursery rhyme. I always wanted to make him look bad and me look better. But in the same regard, I've hurt people as well. And so
Mm.
once you get to the point of why you're holding on to it, then you can begin to realize, I don't have to, I don't need to. I've done things in my life and I just need to let it go.
Absolutely. This is the time also to recognize some of our followers. We have a little dot of observation, I think, unless it's a glitch on Facebook. Narin Bennett, lovely to see you. I hope you're going to enjoy our very honest chat. Agata Bellon, another dot from you. And a little comment. Hello, ladies. Wow, Beata, looks like you are flourishing in Florida. Good evening from Europe. Reverend Dr. Marisha, great to see another awesome PhD guest. Thank you so much, Agatha. I hope Europe is not going to hold you back and is going to leave you residue free, especially that situation in Poland is or can be quite hectic and overwhelming. So, we are going to talk about the residue free life and how to establish our self worth.
Mhm.
Let's go back to where we are establishing our self worth, because when we are growing up, quite often parents or teachers, without even realizing, can leave a spot on our bodies that will stay for a long time. And nobody really speaks to us about how to live residue free. I, for example, had a very rough parenting approach with my mother usually telling me, you're not good enough. And now I know that it wasn't a good way to raise a child, but what would you say to mothers? How to let your children grow?
So that's an interesting topic because I'm a school counselor as well. So I hear from a lot of students who talk about their parents, and I hear about the negative things that parents can say to children. And what I like to say, it leaves a fingerprint on your subconscious in a way where that is all you remember, right? You don't remember the good, but you remember that fingerprint. And so as a parent, I would always, my piece is, we do what we know. And so as a parent, typically you either follow exactly how you were raised, or you go the opposite. It's only two ways. And so typically when parents are negative, when parents are abusive, it is what they saw, it is what they internalized, it is what they experienced. If they didn't have a healthy relationship, typically they give that off into when they're raising their children. And so for parents, I always want them to analyze, how were you raised? What did you experience? Go back to the point when you felt uncomfortable. Go back to the point where you felt broken and you felt you had no voice and you felt you didn't feel loved. Go back to that little girl. And when you go back to that little girl, think about your child, right? And so you got to help people make a connection of where that negativity comes from. And when they can make that connection, then they can do the work to heal and move forward.
Hmm. Well, then I progressed. I mean, even though against all odds, against my teacher from maths telling me that I will not progress and I won't reach any good notes, and I still reached good notes and I managed to go to college and I've gone through education. And then I had my mother telling me that I'm gonna be a spinster because at the age of 22 she was already married, and I had this danger of I've got to find a man who is worthy of, well, I am going to be worthy of attention, and
Mhm,
I went into this vicious circle of being very desperate for being loved. How to break free from that desperation?
mhm. Yeah, I have to say that parents lay a foundation not realizing whether or not it's healthy or unhealthy, whether it's toxic or not toxic. And they just don't realize the power of words. And there's so many women right now who their mother has said something to them like that, where they feel the pressure of getting married. They're not married yet. They don't have children yet. They haven't, because years ago, women got married very younger, but as generations change, things change. And so, but they don't realize that because that's what their grandmother did and their mother did. But they don't realize as we progress, generations change. And so my thing is, moms, like you have to realize that generations are different. Like we're in this generation Z right now. Generation Z, it's hard to understand Generation Z because when you're older, you're so far removed. And so it's very hard for people to understand younger generations and what they're going through and what's different. And so again, it's all about education. It's all about, but again, people have to want to change. People have to want to be open to change and be open to understand that life is different. My daughter's life is different than mine, because we oftentimes compare, but our children's life is so different than ours because of the generational gap. But parents need to be open to change and open to hear the voice of their children.
Hmm. So then the question is, and this is what I was asking myself quite often, is it better to have this self critic or is it better to have no critic at all and do stupid things fast enough for people not to notice?
So the thing about self-critic, the question is, which voice is the loudest? There's always two voices going on in your head. And the question is, which one is the loudest? Is it positive, that positive voice, or is it that negative voice? And sometimes with certain people, negative, that the critic can push them to do positive things. But sometimes a critic can push someone to feel broken, to have low self-esteem. So it just depends on which voice, that self-talk that we all have. It just depends on which voice that you are listening to and which way you'll gravitate.
Hmm. So you advise to gravitate toward this positive voice, not listen to this critical and beating you up voice. Now, I would like to reflect on Liesl Hayes, who in our PhD Positivity Hack Deliver number 16 said, "I was constantly hustling for my own worthiness."
Mm.
So, how often would you advise to revise your worth once you established your worth?
Well, I have to say we evolve as women, we evolve. So to me, every day you should be realizing your worth. I think it changes as you get older, as you progress, as you learn more, as you experience more, you know. And so for me, I think it's daily. And because of when life happens, there's so many different things thrown at you, and so you can today feel like, oh, I know my worth. Oh, I'm good. But tomorrow something can happen and it triggers you and you don't feel it. So I think it's a
Mhm.
daily ritual of reminding yourself of who you are, how worthy you are, how precious, how special you are, how important you are, how your life matters. That is again gravitating to that positive talk that you have to kind of bathe yourself with every day.
That's totally truth. I would agree. We have got Olga Vasina. Olga, I hope you're safe in wherever in the world you are. Reverend Dr. Marisha, Beata, ladies, you look radiant in the USA. Loving the show as always, and thank you for giving us all a voice every Wednesday. That's great, Olga. We give you this voice, and you take it, girl. I hope you can ask us some very tricky questions because we want to have real examples. We have got another comment: in love and in pain. Hello, Marisha. How to deal with people who keeps comparing you with other people, like comparing you with your siblings?
Ooh, I have to say that's a good one. Imma say hmm. So the question is, it's not about what they're comparing you to. The question is, why are you gravitating to holding on to something that isn't true? And so oftentimes we got to realize it's not about what people say to us, it's what we answer to. But then the question is, why does it bother us if it's not true? And parents do that all the time. Parents compare their children all the time. But again, I always try to tell my students, typically parents do what their parents did. And so that's probably what the parents did. And so as a result, they do it with their children. Oh, well, you should have went to school. Oh, well, so and so is better than you at this, and they get better grades. Every child is different. You can't raise children the same way. You can't parent the same way. But again, oftentimes parents are so stubborn and they're not open to change. They're not open to listen to their children. And unfortunately, children suffer as a result. And so we have a lot of adult children right now who suffer because their parents always compared them to their siblings, to the point where there is no good, healthy relationships with their siblings. And so the question is, one, why are they doing that? They're doing it because their parents did it to them. The question is,
Mm,
why are you holding on to it? And what do you need in order to heal so that you don't get stuck in that place? But as parents, we don't read books on how to be a better parent. And so as a result, unfortunately, so many parents don't learn how to be better. Yeah.
mm. So I have to say, because I met just last week Sharon Bowen, the first black woman who is appointed the chairman of New York Stock Exchange, and she was being asked because her sister is an engineer,
Mhm.
and she was asked why choose law instead of engineering like her sister, and she said, "I wasn't as smart as her."
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
is that okay to tell your parents, maybe I'm not as smart as them? Don't compare me to them.
So I think parents do, but it's like a culture that parents don't want to give their children a voice. And so We should be able to listen to our children and what they say and how they feel, but there's so many parents who are so rigid, right? And as a result, that relationship is really broken. And as a result, the question is, when the children have children, how will they raise their children? Because oftentimes, subconsciously, sometimes we don't realize we become our parents.
Mm.
And so the question is, how do you heal? How do you work on you? How can you be whole and not internalize the negativity that your parent is giving you? Because one, they're not open, they're not ready for change, they don't want to change. And two, how can you be whole so that you don't carry on that negativity down generation to generation?
Right. Mario Kaiko on PhD number 5, which was devoted to leadership, she said it's so important to build on strengths. Especially women tend to look at themselves and think of what we are my weaknesses and try to fix them. Mario recently is getting through a divorce and separation. So, Mario, I thought it's worthy of mentioning your journey and the fact that it's not easy journey going through a divorce. So, is there a way to stop fixing what is wrong?
So this is the piece. Our flaws are what makes us beautiful. I love to say in my podcast, God loves your flaws. But unfortunately, we don't. And unfortunately, society doesn't help. And so you have to embrace your flaws. We're not perfect people. We will never be perfect. But if you can embrace your flaws, then you can learn how to heal from them. You know what I mean? And so you got to embrace that part, because that part is who you are. Now, the other piece is, if there's something that you want to work on, do the work. I think oftentimes we want to say, "Oh, this part I don't like." Well, if you don't like it, you have the power to fix it, because the power is within you. And so reclaim, something, whatever you're trying to fix. Does it really need to be fixed, or is it something that you really need to handle because it's, impacting your health, impacting work? Like, what is it influencing? And if it's influencing something, whether it's your health, was it work, relationships, then do the work. Figure, find somebody to help you so that you can be all that you want to be.
Hmm. Marisha, you've gone through divorce. What was your thought process going through this painful journey?
So so interesting. So it was a three, I would say, like a the first piece I need, because I didn't feel loved. I was rejection is really hard, and that was something that I held on to. Um, and one of the flaws, I would say, for me, is what was wrong with me. And so the first piece that I had to work through, or where I started, was that I had to realize that God loved me. And once I realized that, then I got to that second level, I would say, of, well, who is Marisha? Who am I? And so I had been so used to being Mrs. And I'm like, I'm Ms. now. And what is that? What does that look like? So I had to really figure out my identity. I was connected with someone else, and so my identity kind of had to not match, but kind of fit with his. And so now I am this person, and that's the piece. When we're married, I would say, a lot of us, for women, we forget that we are individuals too. And so I had to get back to, who is Marisha? And then once I got back to who is Marisha and loving Marisha, then I shifted to, I think I'm open to love again. And so that was kind of my three-step process.
Right, seems easy, but not so easy to
No.
do when you're in the real deep whatever mess you are going through. I have to tell you, my dear viewers, that I have been going through divorce, and I was actually scared to tell my parents because they were a very traditional family. You too, go for it.
So I have to say this. I have to say this. So my ex and I, we separated after my son was first born. And so we had gotten married. We got married in the Bahamas. 40 people came. It was like a story. I mean, like, Cinderella type of story, I thought. And after my son was born, maybe a year after my son was born, he felt like he didn't want to be married. And we separated the first time for 8 months, and my parents didn't know. Then that second time, 14 years later, it took me a while to tell my parents only because I felt shame. And
Mm,
that was my piece. It was shame. I felt like we've been together so long. How do I tell people? Yeah.
yep. How do you explain? All right. And Trixie Lopez is asking here, how did you explain divorce to your child? That's another.
Ooh, that's a good one. So, it was really interesting because I was bitter. It's easy to get bitter when you've been rejected, and so it's like ask your daddy. I don't know. I was into myself. I was hurt. Ask your dad. And his dad really didn't. He didn't really talk about it. My son was in middle school, um, but after that, I mean, it is what it is. He said he never wanted to be married. However, the interesting part in my situation is my ex-husband started learning how to spend more time with his son when we were separated more than we when we were together. And so it shifted. But in the same regard, my son was like, Daddy's kind of doing too much because he was home, but he wasn't. He was here, but he really wasn't. So my son wasn't really emotional, and still now today wasn't emotionally connected to his dad. And so it's still a struggle, but he understands his mom loves him, his dad loves him, but we just weren't meant to be. And so we've learned how to co-parent over these years, and co-parenting healthy, that right there is key. So that there's so much that we can easily put on our children that they don't need to be involved with, but it's because of our hurt and our pain, that we do that, but they don't really need to be involved in that. It's learning how to co-parent healthy, and having that healthy relationship with the other person.
Right, you've had many experiences with discussing issues that go through female's mind, and I have to admit that quite often I was doubting my worthiness as a mother because I did some stupid mistakes or said something in the anger or whatever was happening. How would you tell what is the best advice you could give to mothers who are going through divorce?
So I would say this: keep your children out of it. One, don't use your children as a pawn. Many of us women, we do that, right? To get back at our ex. Children are children. They're not supposed to be played with. They're not supposed to be manipulated to try to, get something out of the ex. The one thing that I was very transparent with my son. I wanted him to know, when I didn't feel well emotionally, when mentally, I was off balance. But then I also wanted my son to realize, like, his dad basically did what his father did. So his father did the same thing to his mother. So again, we go back to, how we raise our children, or who we become. He basically did the exact same thing his father did. So his father, was distant from the family, although home, but his father was a drug addict, but distant. And so my former mother-in-law didn't understand why her son repeated the same cycle that his dad did to her. And so I wanted to give my son a context of, well, this is your dad. He's not perfect, but guess what? He loves you. and that's all that matters. And so trying to put a positive spin on it, but again, that's not everybody's story. But again, we are creatures who we internalize things from our childhood. And so, try to keep the children out of it. If the dad is not, because some dads are not, they're not in their children's life and they made that decision. But the question is, do you really say that to the child? You really got to be careful with your words, because children hold on to it like a nursery rhyme, and that fingerprint on their subconscious, they won't let that go. And so you want to be really careful with what you say to them.
It's a long cycle, long process, but I think the biggest part of that process is forgiveness. Holding on to anger hurts you. How to heal and forgive. And here is one brilliant quote from Byron Katie: "Forgiveness is just another name for freedom."
Mhm.
So let's discuss how to heal and forgive.
So this is the piece with this is the piece with forgiveness. I love that. It is all connected to freedom. But again, the question is, why are you holding on to something that is not helping you? That is the question. And if and that's one of the reasons why we hold on to residue. That's why we keep residue in our life, because we are holding on to something for some reason, right? And I would say for myself, I wanted to make my ex look bad and make me look better. Well, why? When I have hurt people too. Like, nobody's perfect, nobody is perfect under the sun. And you cannot move forward and go backward at the same time. The question is, where are you trying to go? And so that's all connected to mindfulness, living in the moment. And so many people live in the past. They can't even embrace, they can't even breathe and believe in the now. And that is really what forgiveness is all about. It's not about forgetting. You will never forget because of the imprint.
Mm.
But the question is, can you breathe and believe right now that there is more in front of you than what's behind you?
Beautiful. Marianne is giving us some love and worthy comments. Hello, Reverend Dr. Marisha. Love your glasses. I
Thank you.
agree.
Thank you.
They say social media can cause feelings of envy. How to keep our envious feelings at bay and be contented of what we have. So,
I'm going to say this. That is, so the question is, again, we all go through that. Just be honest about it. Be transparent about it within yourself. I felt that way when other people were married and I got divorced, and it was hard for me. But in the same regard, when other people are blessed, you just have to think that you're next in line. You have to think that soon that you're going to get your turn. You may not know when, but you have to believe that yours is coming. You know what I mean? But it's so easy to get pulled in that. It's very easy that, like, especially, when you get older and you've been wanting children, or, there are a lot of women, unfortunately, now having issues with um, infertility, and
mm,
trying, and when you see a pregnant mother, you get envious. That's real. That is real. That is honest. That's being transparent. But don't stay in that space, right? You just can't stay in that. Again, it's that self-talk. Which one are you listening more to? Which voice is the loudest? Because we have to believe that more is coming your way.
more is coming your way, and I love this quotation. When other people are blessed, you have to believe you're next in line.
Mhm.
I love it. Another thing that we just discussed last week with Tamika Bicham on Positivity Hack Delivered was embrace the fact that other people can succeed and celebrate that, especially if you celebrate other women's achievements, that is enhancing your achievements as well, because she's part of your troop, wherever, whichever platform you're on. Please remember, this is Women Power Pack, and we are going to be stronger and better. We are part of that success.
Mhm.
Right, Marisha, you've gone through divorce. You decided to start your podcast. Tell us about your podcast. What is the aim?
So, Lioness Queen, it's interesting. I actually, because I'm remarried, and I had a conversation with my husband about it, and he said, I really think this would be really good for you to help women heal, to help women hear your story, to help women to move forward, to give them a voice. And so, Lioness Queen, initially, I started Lioness Queen to help women who've experienced divorce. That's what it was initially. And after I would say a year, God shifted it because I was overwhelmed with women who said, I've never been divorced, but this is really blessing me. This is really encouraging me. This is really inspiring me. And I've rebranded actually Lioness Queen um to cover all women who we've all have been through things. We've all have dealt with negative events or trauma. We've all dealt with things. And so the question is, how do we release the residue, and how do we recognize the worth of our crown? And so that is Lioness Queen. Mhm.
It's beautiful. Great to see that you've got opportunity to help all the ladies, all the queens and kings of the world to feel full and appreciated. We've got a lovely comment from Olga Vasina. Ladies, you are so right. There is abundance of for everyone, and life is not a zero-sum game. We can all prosper, and because you succeed, Marisha, that only helps Beata prosper too.
Mhm.
Let's go for growth, ladies.
Mhm.
I would add to that, Olga and Marisha, woman on it, hug the future. We have the power to hug the future, to strive and be full in whatever we are doing. So, loving this vibe with the Lioness Queen.
Thank
That's
you.
another great comment from Olga.
Mhm.
Marisha, I wanted to ask you a question that I quite often was asked when I was leading Geek Girls Carrots in Poland, which is a women in tech organization, started in Poland, went global. And also when I started the Women on It organization in Malta, in the small Mediterranean island, and globally, the same question pops up. How to negotiate a salary?
Oh, wow. That so again, that is connected to your worth.
Yes.
Right? Your salary is connected to your worth. And so the question is, you got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in what you have done and what you can do. How can you bring worth to that company? How can you bring worth to that organization? And how you can articulate, right? How can you articulate your worth in that interview to let them know this is what I'm worth, and this is what my salary, this is what it should be. And especially as a woman, we shouldn't have a fear of that piece, right? Because we should have the same salary as our men counterparts, but unfortunately oftentimes we don't. And so the question is just, how can you articulate your worth in that interview? And that is what's key. That is what's key, because I always say this to my students when they are applying for college. Like, how do you add to the college? How can you make the college better? Right. So that's the same, that applies the same. How can you make that organization or that business better? And that's key in articulating that, and giving them the salary that matches your worth.
And I have to mention those who couldn't join us live, I mean in person. We had a meeting in person on the 8th of March, the International Women's Day, with Anberg, who was talking about her experience of getting the first job and actually admitted that, she didn't have that much of an experience. So her father advised her that, you have to mention the fact that you've been a farmer. You've stripped fur from water rats.
Mhm.
And she did that. And she actually got a job because of that, because they thought, well, if she's capable of stripping animals
Mhm.
of furs, she's gonna be good at this job.
Mhm.
So that self-worth is very important message to women who are considering salary negotiation.
Mhm.
And here is another moment of mention for Cindy Gallop, who said, the amount you ask for is the highest amount you can say out loud without actually bursting out laughing. That's
I
her
love it.
advice.
I love it. I love it.
And the concept is, even if you say that highest amount, you're still not gonna be matching what men are asking for, because
Mhm.
their self-worth is somehow
Mhm.
quite higher. Their bracket is much higher than females.
Mhm.
And that's another reason I would like to mention that artificial intelligence is stuck up against us, because we females tend to look for jobs that have got lower salaries, because we don't believe in our achievements, in what our potential is, and quite often that is repeated over and over. And Google search engine is, for example, stained with the fact that women do not go to the highest uh, job jobs they could otherwise
Mhm.
apply for. Right, we've got Mary in the meantime. She came in with a question. Hi, Beata and Dr. Marisha. A very insightful discussion you have. That's a comment. Lovely to hear from you, Mary. I love the fact that you came with the lovely branding here and the heart. Beautiful. So, Marisha, we are coming to forgiveness as another name for freedom.
Mhm.
We are coming to the fact that you need to be able to forgive and be able to co parent. I have to say that it was quite difficult because my ex husband refused to do co parenting, and
Mhm.
he believed he was better than me because he read some books about kids' psychology, and I did so many mistakes. So, how to deal with another party, another parent refusing to cooperate?
Yeah, that right there is challenging. So I would say the best advice I would say is to speak with either a coach or a therapist. Get find help in order to try to figure out, because that's the thing, you can't change people.
Hmm.
You just cannot change people, and unfortunately, that is very challenging when you have a child together. I've dealt with a lot of women who, have had narcissist husbands, and oftentimes the only thing you can kind of do is kind of help yourself to manage that other person, but you can't control them, you can't change them, and you need help yourself. So that would be that is my advice, because it's very similar to having a boss who is nasty, mean, disrespectful, but you love your job, right? But you're trying to work with them. And so the question is, how do you keep moving forward and still go along with what, because the biggest piece is separating them from you. The biggest piece is separating the fact that whatever energy is going on within them, it's not me. It's not connected to me. And how do you get it to the point where it doesn't bother you? How do you get it to the point where it doesn't phase you? You know what I mean? But again, that's why I said either a coach or a therapist to kind of help you work through it, because you can't change them, but you can change you and how you process, dealing with them, how you work with them, how you communicate with them. You can change you, but you can't change them.
It would be also advisable to reach out to your family to help you, right? I have to say that it was very useful to have some support along the way. But I have to tell you that it was very destroying and very frustrating when I was going through mediation.
Mhm.
It was after the divorce, and we had to change our status with my daughter wanting to stay in Poland. She was still 17 years old, so legally she had to decide which parent to stay with,
Mhm.
and she wanted to stay in Poland with her father. So, in order to do so, we had to draft an agreement. And in the agreement, my ex husband wanted to write some very damaging words. I mean, to me as a mother, damaging. I'm not going to go into details, but really, I had a moment that I had to go out of the meeting and I had to call my support system, my support network to say, am I really thinking stupid, or am I good to be stubborn here and say, I'm not going to allow this to happen, not under my watch?
Mhm. I'm gonna say this, and I tell kids this all the time. By the time children become teenagers, they can see who their parents are. They can see who they really are. And it's nothing you have to say, because remember, I had talked about that piece of be careful what you say to your children about the ex. Children see it. Children can sniff out. I mean, they can sniff anything out. But the question is, again, how do you respond? How do you process? How do you internalize that negativity is thrown at you? That's why I said either a therapist or a coach to help manage that, because you can have family and support, but sometimes you need something to really help block that negativity that's coming at you, because it's just toxic. You know what I mean? And so, what type of strategies could be used in order to defend that? You know what I mean? And again, what's coming at you is not true. The question is, why are you responding, or why are you getting emotional when you know it's not true? And that is what you have to handle and manage and deal with and work through in you, so that when he keeps doing it, it won't phase you. It won't bother you,
Mm.
because you know who you are. You know what type of mother you are. You know the relationship you have with your daughter. And so that's my 2 cents.
That's your very valuable 2 cents. But Marisha, I have to say that the first time I heard from my Polish lawyer the words, and I've never heard it before, maybe it doesn't exist in any other language, but she said, the lie repeated 100 times becomes the truth.
Mm, mm.
So, would you say it's worth sometimes to sticking to your truth? Or
You gotta stay with the truth. The reason why that saying is because you can brainwash yourself to believe a lie. You
Mhm.
can brainwash anybody to believe a lie. That's all. The a false reality. You can have somebody believe a false reality. That is very easy to do. But you got to stay true to who you are, even if that means that your children may not see it in the moment, right? So I did an interview a few weeks ago where the lady who was interviewing me, she's doing this conference, trying to help women heal. Her sister committed suicide because her husband rejected her, and her children live with their father. And the sister was just devastated. But again, children will see the truth. Like, the truth will come out. You just have to wait that thing out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But children can be brainwashed very easily, and this false reality is created. until they see the truth for themselves. And it always comes out. The truth always comes out.
Totally. I had to cry a lot of times and I had to wait and I had a moment of, well, I think about it tomorrow because it's just overwhelming sometimes. We have a last question that we can chip in because we are last 10 minutes into the show. Agata Bellon is asking, we all hear about people damaging each other, but how far can you go in turning the other cheek, Marisha?
While turning the other cheek biblically, that it's supposed to be 7 times 7, and that's daily biblically, supposedly. But again, this is the peace. The peace is realizing what they're saying. It's not about me. It's not connected to me. It's not about me. Again, you have to do that self-talk to realize this has nothing to do with me. It's about their brokenness. It's about their upbringing. It's about what's missing in their life. And you have to do that separation. When you can make that detachment from their issues and who you are, it won't phase you.
Yeah, don't look back. You're not going that way. You're going forward.
Mhm.
Marisha, we are last few minutes from very vital questions we like to ask. What is the number one book you can sit and think, oh, I wish I read it before I started my career or my journey as a podcast host?
You know what? That's really interesting because I'll have to say none.
Oh,
And the reason I say that is because there's so many people who read, and don't do. There's so many people who read books and they read and they learn and they never take that step. They never move forward. They never start. They never start. So I have to say none, actually. I'm a doer, that's for sure. Like I've always been, ever since I was younger. Like I've had like a main job, but I've always tried other things, and that is just who I have been. So even with my podcast, I mean, I've read a lot of articles about it. Google is my best friend. I didn't have Google growing up. Google is my BFF. So I can learn. You can learn anything at the drop of a hat with Google, and that's kind of how I started my podcast, and I just did it.
which goes back to your
Mhm.
start of our conversation, which is whatever people are thinking or talking about you is none of your business because you can change the things for your life and nobody else is going to change for you.
Mhm.
Right, let's go to are you working on any exciting new projects right now, Marisha?
I actually am. I'm starting an online radio station, actually a Christian radio station. I'm so excited about it. So it's going to have Christian rock, traditional Christian music, gospel, country Christian music, just every genre. And so I'm excited about starting Linus Queen Inspirational Station.
So that's going to be your own radio station.
Yes.
Yes, fantastic. Well, I hope we can bring some of our outtakes of positivity hacks delivered because we are always in the hunt of women on it, hack the future, those who feel underappreciated and want a new direction in life. Now, can you please give us your favorite life lesson quote and how did it change you in your life at the moment, wherever you were?
So I would say my favorite lesson is something that my mother taught me as a little girl, and it is the reason why I am who I am today. And she said, I can do anything I want to do. I just have to decide it in my mind and do it. And that's something she's taught me as a little girl. And if there's something that I've wanted to try to do, I have tried it. I I have I started out when I was younger. I was a professional clown at once, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed being a professional clown. I had gotten my manicuring license. I used to have a paint party business. Now I'm a podcaster. Like I have tried a lot of different things. Also, I used to um, deal into real estate. So I've tried a lot of different things in my life, but it was all because that my mom instilled in me that I can do or be anything.
And you definitely have done anything you wanted. Was there any particular moment that you doubted that you can do anything you want?
I would say during my divorce, I felt, I really felt helplessness, right? I felt hopelessness, helplessness, depression, suicidal ideation. I went through the whole gamut, and in that moment, I didn't feel like I was capable of anything. And so when I was in, I would say my darkest valley is when I felt like I couldn't do.
Mm. And what would be advice to those who would like to help women or people who are in that darkest moment? What would work with you, Marisha?
I would say when you're in that darkest moment, you always have to realize the situations are temporary. Valleys are temporary. And that, when you're on this roller coaster of life, you will have hills and valleys, but you don't stay in a valley forever.
Mhm. Right. Marisha, you're happily married. I hope you're still happily
I
married,
do.
remarried. Good. And this is a perfect moment for a quotation prepared by Racy. This is a quotation from Kathy Monke. Marriage is like vitamins. We supplement each other's minimum daily requirements. How do you supplement each other?
You know what? I have to say, like yin and yang. Um, I believe we complete each other. Like, some movies have said we complete each other. I believe that there are characteristics that in both of us that just make us whole, but we should also be whole within ourselves as well. But it's just a combination that when I'm low, you're high. When he's low, I'm high. And so it's that combination of that yin and yang, that circle, and when we're put together. So no matter who is deflated or who doesn't have, the other one can match up or provide when needed.
Right, we are coming to the end of our show. There is another quotation that is worth in mention. There is no such thing as a broken family. Family is family and is not determined by marriage certificates, divorce papers, or adoption documents. C. Joy Bell said that. And true forgiveness is when you can say thank you for that experience. Beautiful Oprah Winfrey said that. Now it's time to finish with tell people and they may forget, show them, they may remember, but involve them and they will understand. And next week, we are going to talk about career change. A pay cut can make you richer with Rennie Morsch. I advise everybody to join us next week. This is it from Marisha, and this is also my message to you. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude, Maya Angelou says. Today is your day to hack the future, hack the positivity you want. Thank you.
Thank you.